here. With the increasing pace of change in technology, is the nature of the digital divide also constantly changing? So I think that kind of relates to that debate you're having. What do you think? Maybe Sarah, do you have a view on the idea of the digital divide, or Sue? Any thoughts?
Well, Sarah, I could just say something short. I think in terms of the digital skills that children need, with the pace of change of technology, they're definitely changing. With the so much, in AI and machine learning, we all know about that. We need young people to be more critical and evaluative about the uses of digitization and the digital world, and what's happening in the world, and be able to not just have basic skills, be able to use this and use that. They need to know why it's being used, when it's appropriate to be used, and the implications of it being used for themselves and for society. And I think that has really shifted quite significantly in the last 5 years, and we need to be looking at our digital education and our digital curricula with that in mind.
Yeah, thanks.
I'd just add, I think certainly the technology is becoming more and more ubiquitous. The rates of ownership and the access to technology is increasing everywhere, although obviously much more slowly in some countries. But I'm not sure that that's changing the nature of the digital divide. I think wherever there's technology access, there are always inequities within, across that access, whether you're looking at radio or high-powered computers. That's been the case historically, and I don't see that changing, unfortunately. I mean, somebody mentioned earlier about giving out devices is the easy bit. I was quite shocked to learn a couple of weeks ago that secondary school student in a city less than 50 miles from Cambridge, during the third wave of the pandemic, so between January and February, when the schools were closed, still did not have access to a laptop at home. There was none in the home. So she had to go to school, in order to access any kind of learning. It's just shocking to me that in an affluent country like England, we still haven't, solved that. And yet, when we look at other countries, that it's obviously a much bigger scale of challenge.
Well, thanks. So I'll move on to another question put by Melanie Grew, who is not with us live, I think, anymore, but she put an interesting question, I think probably focused a bit more on Tom's area due to the bilingualism in Wales, because she says, I'm particularly interested in the intersection of digital divide for linguistically and culturally diverse communities. So I guess there's an intersection of issues there. I don't know if you're the right person to start off with that, Tom.
Yeah, happy to. Dwi'n trio dysgu siarad Cymraeg, so I suppose I'm trying to learn to speak Welsh. I think it's interesting in a bilingual, or the aspirations of a bilingual nation, obviously with a rich kind of cultural heritage, which has, for example, had a massive impact on the major kind of curriculum reform journey over the past 5 years. So, Wales has largely followed the kind of English national curriculum since it started, and that's only since devolution to the National Assembly in 1999 and the various iterations of the curriculum. But this has been designed from it's been co-constructed with practitioners. It's bilingual from outset, and it recognises the kind of the curriculum Cymraeg, the kind of the Welsh kind of cultural and sort of heritage aspects that are important across what you consider important to be a future citizen of Wales. So and the Welsh government have a stated aim to the Welsh language has been on the increase for a long time, and there's a thriving Welsh language communities. There are thriving Welsh language communities online, so you can see on Twitter, on Facebook, you can see S4C, which is the national broadcaster. This is a mechanism for you have bilingual schools, you have a thriving Welsh medium sector. So this is a big shift. People recognise and acknowledge the benefits of being bilingual, kind of cognitively and sort of developmentally. But actually, it's the fact there's a cultural context that's really, really important. And I think that is interesting in other bilingual or multilingual jurisdictions. So the stuff that happens in Wales is kind of interesting in other parts of the world where the other language might be English. So I think there's interesting stuff that's played out in a digital context, and that has economic imperatives, that has kind of socio-cultural imperatives too. But I think it's kind of perhaps sometimes can get swamped in the wider UK context, because you know, I suppose not many people, apart from, you know, you sometimes see stuff on the news about what happens in Wales, or, you know, very difficult to pronounce names, and it's have a bit of a giggle about stuff. But actually, you know, I think there's sometimes can be quite problematic because of the dominance of English language, and actually understanding about, yeah, a lot of people's first language of choice is Welsh, and people will tweet primarily in Welsh, and they'll interact it through digital means, and their children will be educated through the medium of Welsh, certainly up to the age of 18, but maybe do their university education through the medium of Welsh. So I think this is a specific issue in Wales, but clearly is relevant for loads of other jurisdictions across the world. And I think that the digital kind of cultural aspects, where a lot of our lives and our interactions and our kind of, you know, our behaviors and our, you know, our work and our entertainment is done online, that has a massive consequence for, you know, the internet isn't just in English.
Yes, thanks. I was just reading a comment in the question and answer from Julian Desant, who's I think working in Carmarthenshire on these issues, and he says that in our experience in West Wales, our learners from disadvantaged backgrounds, especially bilingual learners, struggle to develop a voice, where voice means the capacity to participate in a discourse and have the agency in relation to its content and direction. If learning is relational and not transactional, and this is a key question online in particular, perhaps. I don't know, what do you think about that?
I'm looking forward to meeting with Julian in a week or two's time, actually. So no, I think that's a really interesting. I think, you know, that I think again we could probably talk about this for another kind of an hour or so. But I think there's a lot of awareness about this in Wales, because actually there's like I said, the socio-cultural aspect, but there's the economic aspects. But you know, it's the different demographic perspective. So there are young people whose identity, say their digital identity, manifests, you know, their kind of Welsh culture and identity that's the way they do stuff online. So, you know, you can be quite naive to this kind of stuff. And, you know, for example, the Welsh government have an aspiration by 2050 to have 1 million Welsh speakers. So there's, you know, legislative statutory footing for the language, and there are clear aspirations to be a bilingual nation. So this is only going to become more of an issue kind of going forward. Or no, not an issue, but to be a really interesting theme going forwards in Wales.